Welcome to Summit University. Today our guest is Steven Acuff. He's a best-selling author and lecturer on health and diet in Europe and the United States. Mr. Acuff specializes in the macrobiotic diet. He is an instructor at the Cushy Institutes in Massachusetts and a nutritional counselor at a medical clinic in Germany. He is also director of a macrobiotic center in Sweden. Mr. Acuff is here today to talk about Oriental Diagnosis.
We're going to start this session today with the hands, using the hands for diagnosis. So far we've been dealing with our basic constitution. We've talked about the difference between condition and constitution. And then we looked at the face, the different aspects of the face and what that can mean. And the hands are part of this general body diagnosis or health evaluation. And we can see both constitutional and conditional aspects of our bodies, of our health, in the hands. If we think about the terms of yin and yang, which are the forces of expansion and contraction, just the way our heart is beating constantly with one expansion phase and one contraction phase. Our lungs are constantly expanding and contracting, and we are vibrating also with expansion and contraction, considering the whole body. The hands have, when we think of the position on the body, a very yin or expanded place. They're the furthest point from our center, which would be about the pancreas. So when we take strong yin foods, which are things like sugar in all its forms, including chocolate, ice cream, when we take honey, when we take tropical fruits, bananas, and citrus fruits like oranges, if we take coffee, alcohol, these things which are strong yin, the tendency in the body will be that the yin energy moves outward. So the hands are a place where you can see yin excess very easily. So in previous sessions, we've taken a look at the hands, so this subject is not new to you. And what we find is that often the hands, instead of being firm, are slightly puffy. So puffiness is, of course, expansion. And that is tu yin. Whereas firmness shows more balance. However, the hands don't just show us yin, they can also show yang. Some people will get very yellow, hard calluses on their hands. Now, hardness is more yang. So people who like to eat cheese will tend to get more yellow calluses. People who work with their hands, of course, get calluses. The question is, does the skin just harden, or does it become very thick and get a very strong yellow color? That's really the difference. So, what we've seen so far is that the hand can be either dry or wet. So you can imagine, with our terms yin and yang, that dry hands would show more a yang condition, and wet hands a more yin condition. As we saw in one case yesterday, the hands had become wet recently, which could be a sign of now discharging of strong yin that's being held inside, which is now being released. So with a handshake, we already can begin evaluating the health of the person we're meeting. But the hands are especially interesting for us also because our basic subject from a previous session was constitution. And as you will recall, we talked about constitution and seeing that the hand in relation to the fingers gives us insight. If a person has a broad hand, now men generally have somewhat broader hands than women, but among men, a broader hand, or among women, a broader hand, is a sign of more yang constitution. It's the broadness rather than the length. And a thinner, smaller hand that goes longer is more yin. Or if the fingers are longer. When we see a yang basic constitution, quite often the fingers are somewhat shorter than the hand. And with yin constitution, the fingers are longer. So these constitutional things we, of course, can't do anything about. They just give us insights into our background and also into what we should do in the future to be in balance. In other words, if we have a yang constitution, in other words, shorter fingers, we should be careful about taking strong yang foods. Things like cheese, meat, salty foods, baked things, smoked, salted animal food, because our bodies already have this yang charge, and we get easily thrown out of balance if we take a lot of these yang foods. If the hand is thin, this is, of course, as I mentioned previously, sign of yin constitution. I would show that this person should be especially careful with yin extreme. Now, many people are a mixture of both. You'll see maybe somewhat longer fingers, but a very broad hand, showing the mixture of these two, because everybody is a mixture of these two energies. There's no clear dividing line. But some people are very clear examples of a predominance of one energy or the other. So, with that in mind, we can then now go into a little more detail with the hand. And we can start with a picture of the hand, which I will draw on the board. And hopefully it will look a little better than the face I drew yesterday. So, we have, looking at the palm, the first line, which goes along the base of the thumb, we call the lifeline. So this line should be smooth, clear, and long, optimally. If you have a strong constitution, this line will be clear. There'll be no interruptions. There'll be no forks, no little islands or side branches going off, but it's one good, long, clear line. It may even go all the way around the ball of the thumb. This shows the potential for a long life, according to the original Chinese understanding. This doesn't mean we will live a long life, of course, because whether or not we live a long life is a very complex issue. It has to do with the way we live, the way we treat our bodies, but what it does show is the potential for a long life. And people who have a lot of sickness and have short lives, even though they have these very good lifelines, these are people who have unfortunately not understood the basics of health. They have not understood how to live in balance and have brought their bodies out of balance so much that this original strength is transformed into weakness. So the right hand is more important than the left hand. For those of you who maybe were happy about the lifeline on the left hand, if you have differences, the right hand has precedence. I see some people are very relieved here. Great. So the right hand has precedence, and I'll tell you why. If you recall a previous session, we talked about the left side of the body being heaven's force, and the right side of the body being earth's force. In other words, we have a downward flow of energy on the left side, an upward flow of energy on the right side. So the left side as heaven's energy, we can also say this is father side. This is the father side. When a child is formed, the father's influence will predominate on the left side, mother's influence on the right side. So we can think of like Father in heaven. This is a picture for us for the left side. And because this is an energy coming out of heaven, which we can think of as a very expanded space which is becoming more yang as it comes to earth, this is especially important for our nervous system. Our nervous system is picking up the vibrations which we're taking in from above. And the quality of our nervous system will determine, to a great degree, our ability to pick up and properly understand the impulses we're receiving from higher levels. The right side is what we call Earth's force, as you recall, and we can think of this as Mother Earth, the Earth Mother. And this is an energy which is denser because it's Earth, but it's going toward heaven, which is a very broad space, so it's has a more yin flow. But the mother side stands for our physical strength, as opposed to the nervous system, which is father's influence. So that's why the right side, which your lifeline, is your physical strength. It's not a question of your nervous system, it's your physical strength, and that's why the right side is more important than the left side, because it's mother's influence. So when we understand that, then we can look and see, of course, if both lines are long, this is good, because this is not an arbitrary border between them, but sometimes we see differences. And if we do have them, the right side is the one that gives us the clearest picture of our constitutional strength. So if there are interruptions, this shows a tendency to some health weakness. It's not so mystical if we just think about an embryo in the mother's womb, and the hands are like this, and what actually shows on the hand is nothing more than a record of what went on during pregnancy, as well as the original genetic charge. So if the mother is drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, abusing her body, during pregnancy, this will show up as a record in the child's hand. If she's living a simpler kind of life, working hard, busying herself with the important things in life, but especially also eating simpler foods, which of course in earlier times was very common. Yeah, a couple of centuries ago, we wouldn't have to talk about simpler foods because there was nothing else. But then the lines show longer and clearer with this kind of background. So it's been very interesting for me to test this theory through the years with people, looking at elder people and looking at younger people, and also looking at the children of macrobiotic couples to see how this line looks. And my experience has been that the theory is confirmed through the examples I've seen. So we have a good idea. Now, if we have a lot of interruptions, or the line only goes halfway down our hand, then this should not be cause for concern that I'm not going to live a long life, or only health problems are waiting on the horizon for me, but rather we should use all this information always in a very constructive, positive manner to say that if you don't have a long lifeline, this means you don't really have a lot of space to fool around. You know, you can't really, assume that the degenerative problems of our modern society are not going to hit you. So if you can use it in this way, then it's very constructive. And I emphasize that because my experience has been that there is a lot of fear that goes through our society. And when I stand here before you and mention these things, which I think we should always take in a light, playful way, I'm again and again astounded at how much fear some people have and how much such a statement can actually cause them a lot of grief and worry. And we shouldn't see it that way at all. The fact that you are being exposed to this information is, of course, a great gift. I was exposed to this many years ago, and I'm very grateful for that because it turned my life around. It turned unhappiness into happiness for me. And we want to use this information always in a positive, constructive way. And hopefully after these sessions, when you go out into life again with this knowledge, you will be able to use it in a constructive way, and it will not contribute to more fear, but rather to more insight into how to make a better future. Like we're all developing along our path in life, and that's the whole point of everything that I'm saying in these sessions. So the lifeline is a very clear indicator. So when I do health counseling, I practically always look at the hands and I look at the lifeline to see how it is. If it's very interrupted, if it's very unclear or short, I might point out to the person that should really be very careful and not assume that the body can take as much abuse as they're dishing out to it. So, then if the lifeline shows interruptions further down towards the ball of the thumb, then we would say this shows that potential for getting health problems later in life. The lifeline follows along almost with our life. Say that if the interruptions come earlier, then health problems would more easily come at an earlier phase. So the longer it goes, the better in any case, as we're going on further and further in life. And for those who have these wonderful lifelines that curl around the bottom of the thumb here, which we see on elderly people, these people are blessed with a very strong constitution. So you can check out, for example, for younger people, you can check out your grandfather's lifelines. You can look at, if you're elder, you can look at your children's lifelines, grandchildren's lifelines, and see how they look. The second one, which comes off of the thumb, starting at about the same place as the lifeline. Some people it starts exactly at the same place. Other people there's a gap. But the second line the Chinese called the head line, with your head, meaning it has to do with your nervous system. This line should be shorter, where these are opposites, whereas the lifeline should be long. It's actually good that the headline is short. And this might be a little bit short. Usually, on many people, it comes out to about here, and then it may trail off a little bit like that. So here, because this is father's energy, here we're talking about left hand as the one that takes predominance. It's the opposite. So father's influence, left side. So if this is very long, it shows that there is strong yin in your basic constitutional nervous system. So such people would more easily be thrown out of balance by taking those yin substances which affect the nervous system. That's alcohol, caffeine, drugs, those kind of things. Things which have a strong stimulating effect on the nervous system. So left side takes predominance, but we also look at the right side. So fortunately, my left side is shorter than my right side. Then the third line, the one that goes from below the little finger up towards the middle or the index finger, this one is called the circulation or heart line. Chinese just call it the heart line. Corresponds to our circulatory system. These are our three basic systems: our digestive, physiological system, our nervous system, and our circulatory system. When an embryo forms, first of all, there are two basic systems. That's the digestive and the nervous systems. Those form. The nervous system is forming in the head and along the back of the embryo. The digestive system is forming on the inside. The nervous system becomes hard through the accumulation of calcium to form a backbone and the skull. It's hard. Its opposite is the digestive system, which is soft. Our nervous system is dealing with vibrational kind of input, whereas our bodies, physiologically, our digestive system, are dealing with the more solid kind of input, food and liquid. So these are our opposites. And the circulatory system forms later on. But already after a month, already the basis for the heart is already there. So I have to chuckle sometimes when I hear people debating the subject of abortion, and they're talking about at what age is this child a living being. You know, it's very arbitrary. Like in some countries, they'll say up to a certain age it's okay, you know. But actually we know that from the very moment of conception, this is a living being. And already at the age of 1 month, there is a recognizable heart. So this is our third line, and the important thing of this is not the length, but rather that it's just clear and not too branched or interrupted. Now, what I found interesting yesterday with the last session we did was we looked at the hand of the last person to come up, And this man had on his hand he had these two together. So this is a sign of weakness in constitution. When the circulation and the headlines, the heart and headlines, are not separated, clear, but rather they're together. It's sometimes called the simian line. And this is a sign of especially strong yang. In other words, during pregnancy, the mother became too young, especially using strong animal food. So that instead of having separation, which is more yin, in other words, 3 clear lines, actually the 2 lines are tightened together. So you can look at your hands. It's an exception. You know, most people have 3 clear lines, but some people do have these 2 growing together, so they actually have 2 lines. So if you do have only 2, many people have only on one hand the 2. The other hand is 3. If you have it on both hands, then you really have to watch out. This is a clear sign of constitutional weakness. But the good side of that is that through conscious living and food choices, you can turn weakness into strength and still live healthier than people who have very clear lifelines. In fact, as I said in a previous session, there is a tendency for people with strong constitutions to suffer more from what we can call the big hammer. That's, you know, people that are weaker constitutions, they'll be more sensitive, so they'll get different problems. And they'll say, well, I've got to do something about this. I'll maybe go to a doctor, or I'll go to a chiropractor, I'll go to a homeopathic therapist, because they're always working with their bodies because they know they really aren't doing too well. People with strong lifelines sometimes delude themselves into believing that they can handle anything. And the big hammer is severe illness, which comes on very fast. It's like just holding the dam, and then suddenly the dam breaks, and you're washed out. This is a classic example is the person, 47 years old, who walks down the street and drops over dead of a heart attack. And people say, he was never sick a day in his life. I don't understand this. He actually was sick, but he just didn't show it because his constitution was so strong that everything was held inside. The plaques that built up in his blood vessels, of course, didn't show. The cholesterol that clogged his veins didn't show. But the big hammer can take a strong constitution and make a short life out of that. Very tragic thing. Finland has the world's highest rate of heart disease, heart attacks. The average age of heart attack is in Finland the youngest in the world. Finland is sometimes referred to poetically as the land of beautiful widows. And when we look at the basic constitution of Finns, they're very strong people. They have very strong constitutions. I have several times had lecture tours in Finland, and these are very strong people. Imagine this little country of just a couple of million people stood off the Red Army in the Second World War, prevented the Red Army from engulfing Finland and making it part of the Soviet Empire. Very strong people, but very high rate of heart attacks because their basic constitution is ruined by very high animal fat intake. So strong constitution is only a basis for us. What we make out of that is a different thing. So then once we see our hand and see these different lines, we can begin looking at the individual fingers and thumbs. Here it's very helpful for us to keep in mind the acupuncture meridians for our diagnosis. The acupuncture meridian, which runs along the thumb, is related to the lung. So thumb condition has a lot to do with lung, or also, as I mentioned previously, with the breast in women. So this is lung energy. The index finger is related to the large intestine. Now these two are connected and make up an acupuncture energy channel. The lung is one half and the large intestine is the other half. And it's like an energy spark flows over from one to the other as it flows. The middle finger is related to what is called heart governor. Heart governor is a body function which is not recognized by Western anatomy, but in Eastern medicine it's recognized as a heart-supporting function, that the heart is the very center of our existence. Everything stems from the heart, so I'm sure you all will agree with. And the heart is so important that it's not likely that we would have only one meridian for this very important special part of the body. So there is a heart meridian and there is a heart governor, which is like a heart protector, and it just ensures that the heart will not easily get out of balance. The ring finger is related to the triple heater. The triple heater is also an organ function which is not recognized in Western anatomy. And these two are also connected. So this is the one energy channel that has no Western corresponding aspect. The triple heater, as the name sounds, in Chinese it just means three burning spaces. It's the idea of heat in the body. Heat is what makes us living beings. It's warmth through metabolism and through body processes. So what the triple heater actually means for the Chinese, the three burning spaces, is the heart chakra, the solar plexus chakra, and the navel or intestinal chakra here, just under the navel, just 2 fingers under. These 3 chakras are the 3 burning spaces. They're special points of energy in the body. Even though there are 7, these 3 are related to the so-called triple heater. So this one is related to the heart. It's the heart chakra. It's the upper one. The middle one has to do with the digestion and assimilation of food, stomach area, and the lower one has to do with our elimination functions. So these are all very closely related also to our nervous system. So if we want to try to bring the idea of triple heater into context with our Western thinking, we might call this one the nervous system. So the nervous system is shown on 2 places we can see. It is the head line, which is the second one, and it is the index finger. No, not the index, excuse me, the ring finger. Then the index finger and the lifeline both show intestinal or digestive strength. These are basic constitutional things which don't change. So we can see what our basic makeup is. The little finger, interestingly, the smallest finger, but has 2 meridians. On the inside part, we've got the heart, and on the outside part, we've got the small intestine. These 2 meridians are related to each other. They build one energy channel. So this is energy that's constantly flowing through our bodies. We're taking this energy in through our chakras and through our energy channel openings, which go along the back, are called the U points. U points are acupuncture points which go to the left and right of our backbone. And these are the energy entrance points. And these then go into the acupuncture meridians. So without being acupuncturists, we can still use this system very constructively because we know the general flow. So if someone now comes to me and shows me that there is always some kind of skin irritation coming along here, and says, what can this be? My first response will be, I would assume that this has something to do with the lung. And people who get lung cancer, or sometimes breast cancer, you'll sometimes see a greenish tinge that builds up right here, because a grayish green tone is the most common cancer color. You have to be able to look at your skin tone without the veins, because the veins can give a greenish tone. Some people get a shock, you know, think that they've just heard that they have cancer, but oftentimes the greenish tone you'll see is nothing more than the veins. If you've got the kind of veins that more protrude, come to the surface. But we're talking about a general shade that goes over the whole skin. If you know people who have such diseases, ask them if you can look at their skin. It's the best way to learn. Best way to learn this kind of health evaluation is when you meet people who have the problems, examine them and see if you can confirm what they have from what you've learned. So if you meet someone who has lung or breast cancer, lung cancer is a very common cancer, one of the most common and one of the most fast rising. In fact, it is the most rapidly increasing cancer, together with melanoma, very aggressive skin cancer. So we can use our meridians for diagnosis of what's going on with us. Now, for our constitutional evaluation, we have a couple of things that are interesting. Number one, if the fingers are not always as straight as we think they are. You know, we think we got straight fingers. If you look at your fingers carefully, you'll see that some tend to bend outward and some tend to bend inward. In other words, some bend away from the thumb and some bend towards the thumb. So, if you've got all straight fingers, this shows very good harmony in your constitution, or especially in those fingers that are straight. Some people have some straight and some bent. So a very clear energy creates a straight finger. So if the tendency of the hands or the fingers are out, away from the thumb, this is a sign of more yin in the constitution. If the fingers tend to go towards the thumb, this is a sign of more yang. It's more towards the center. You know, like originally the thumb is the very center. I mentioned before the antagonistic, opposite relationship of the large intestine, or the digestive energy, and the nervous system as being our two basic systems. These are shown in the index and the ring fingers. So when we look at our hand like this, the index finger and the ring finger should be the same size if we have symmetry and balance in our basic constitution. Some people, the ring finger is actually longer. On other people, it's the index finger which is longer. Now, to do this, you just look at your hand in a relaxed way. You know, you can actually, you know, manipulate your hand so you can make anything happen. But just look, like in a very relaxed way, just open your hand and look at those fingers and see, are the fingers the same length? So if the triple heater, or the nervous system, is showing more yin here, longer, this is a sign of less strength. Less strength. It's best to have them both the same. Or if this one gets longer, this is also a sign of less strength here in your digestive ability, in the original constitutional strength of your digestive tract. The little finger should actually come up to the last segment of the finger. If it comes up just here, that would show that your circulation, which is shown in the little finger, your circulation is balanced in its constitutional strength. Sometimes the finger is shorter. It only goes up maybe halfway in the middle of the middle segment. And this is a sign of very strong yang in the circulatory system, and shows also that these people should be very careful eating animal quality food, because they very easily can get circulatory problems from strong yang. The shorter finger shows more yang energy in that meridian from the beginning. Then for those of you who like detail, you can actually look at your fingerprints and see, do the fingerprints have a real spiral? Because a spiral is the pure form of energy. Energy spirals. And if you have spirals on any of your fingerprints, of your fingertips, then this is a sign of constitutional strength. Some of them are more like this. This is very common, just like that. There's no spiral. So that's just, say, average. But those who have really been blessed with a strong constitution will have these spirals. It's very rare to have several of them, but some people do. I have met a few people who have almost all spirals. But if you have difficulty, you might look under a magnifying glass to get exactly what's going on here. But spirals are definitely a sign of strength. And if you have lots of spirals, then this could be a consolation in case you don't have long earlobes. Then you know that all is not lost, because, of course, as I mentioned previously, long earlobes are a sign of a strong constitution. That's why we like to have as many things as possible to look at, because we don't want to draw too many conclusions just from one aspect, but rather see what we've got in its totality. If the fingers are straight, if they have these proper proportions, and if you've got spirals, this is strong constitutional strength, all showing in the hands. And whenever you see a weakness, for example, let's say the ring finger is longer than the index finger, then this would be a message to you that your nervous system really needs good quality yang to be promoted. It's your nervous system is where heaven and earth meet. And it's only with a very strong nervous system that you're able to perceive vibrations out of the universe. And having a more yang nervous system is very beneficial for spiritual development. So your ring finger will give you some insight into this. We just think of man as the receiver of cosmic vibrations. We can well imagine cosmic vibrations are more yin. They have no substance. They're at a much higher frequency. They're not slowed down to our more earthly existence. So vibrates at a very high level, but it has no concrete substance. It's energy in its more yin form. If we think about opposites attracting, we can understand that the nervous system has to be yang if we are going to receive these yin vibrations. So we can understand why spiritually oriented people recommend that we do not drink alcohol, because alcohol is very yin. For those of you who have tried it, you maybe can remember back in those days that if you would drink a little too much, you get a feeling that your head would expand. You had this feeling like this. We call that yin. Now, if your nervous system becomes yin, you have a difficult time attracting yin, because exactly as male and female attract, so yin and yang attract, and a yang nervous system is the way we become a good antenna for this kind of energy. So you can imagine what happens if we eat sugar. What happens to the nervous system? Becomes very yin, very similar to alcohol. So, for spiritual development, we should avoid sugar. Now let's think about drugs for a second, what those would do to our energy. And also, prescription drugs. If we take those a lot, sometimes we need them. Sometimes it's life-threatening situations. But if our life is dominated by taking prescription drugs, this will tend to weaken our nervous system. It will make us too yin, and we have to work much harder to perceive cosmic vibrations. The original color of the yin-yang symbol, in a previous session I showed you the cover of my book where you saw the Chinese Taoist symbol of yin and yang. Most people know it. It's the two halves with the S form in the middle and two dots on each side. Do you know what the original Chinese colors were of the yin-yang symbol? We often see it as black, white, or different colors. What colors were the original Chinese? Red and violet. Red and violet. Think about the colors of the rainbow for a second. The colors of the rainbow go from red all the way through yellow to violet. Yellow is the balance in the middle. That's why the Yellow Emperor, if you're interested in reading more about acupuncture theory and Oriental medicine, read the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Medicine. He was called the Yellow Emperor not because he was Chinese, but because yellow is the color of the middle. But on each extreme we have red and we have violet. Red is the most yang color. Violet is the most yin color. So, if you speculate on everything I've said so far, what if spiritual vibration, cosmic vibration, has a color? Which color would that be? Violet. So if we make ourselves yin, we have more difficulty absorbing violet or cosmic energy. So we don't want to make ourselves yin. The nervous system is very important. And today, our society is doing everything to disturb it. There are over 1 million children in this country who are receiving sedatives. Imagine what the future of this country would be if this goes on and on. These children grow up, their bodies, their nervous systems are still forming to puberty, and already 7, 8, 9-year-old children are receiving sedatives. This will weaken their nervous system and make them very dull for higher vibrations and for even dealing with the problems of our world, which require a lot of down-to-earth sense, common sense. We know that the phosphates, which are in soft drinks, cola drinks, we know that these phosphates produce hyperactivity in children. We know that the phosphates in hot dogs produce hyperactivity in children. We know that the cheese, with all the phosphates, produces hyperactivity in children. But rather than eliminate those products, we give those to children and then give them sedatives when they get too wired up. So, for a healthy future, for a generation that has to deal with very big environmental problems, all kinds of heavy crises which are on the horizon, to deal with those, we need a very clear nervous system. And we don't have that if we take strong yin things, and especially if we feed those things to our children, because our children are the future. So with understanding of yin and yang, we can see that people are becoming more yin. Their nervous systems are becoming more yin. And that very common sense things are very hard to understand because there's a certain amount of confusion in the nervous system. So we continue treating the planet in a way that is eroding our basis of life, and nothing is done about it. We have agriculture methods which are very harmful to the earth, and especially meat. There's probably nothing which is pushing us faster to ecological collapse than the big hunger people have for beef. I don't know if any of you have read anything by Jeremy Rifkin. He calls beef hoofed locusts because of the effect that cattle grazing has on the earth. In any case, a clear nervous system is what we need for the future, and we need to make it yang. Yang means, first of all, avoiding the yin extremes I've just mentioned, and then secondly, taking proper yang foods. It's especially whole grains as the basis of your diet. Whole grains. That's yang, that's balanced yang energy. And it's taking seaweeds. Of course, not in large amounts, but small amounts of seaweeds. With all of their minerals, the seaweeds are the best one food for the promotion of our nervous systems. If the large intestine meridian is very yin, in its basic formation, then the index finger will be longer. This shows us that we should be very careful also not to take strong yin things, because our basic energy is so yin that we can't afford it. And this will create a tendency to expansion of the intestines, weakness of the intestines. Now, in Oriental understanding, the center of our being is in the heart. The heart and the heart chakra is the center of our spiritual being, our energetic being. The center of our physical being is what the Japanese call hara. It is the area, what we would call the small intestines, and then the large intestine wrapped around it. It's the intestinal area. This is the physical center. The Chinese consider our kidneys to be the residence of our earthly qi, our life force. The heart is the residence of our spiritual energy. Our life force qi sits in our kidneys. We have a left kidney and right kidney, which means one is governed by Earth's force and one by Heaven's force. And they're like male and female energy that are creating the yin-yang or alpha-omega polarity. And there is an energy field between our kidneys. And in this field, we have the intestinal area. So this is the center of our physical being. So if the large intestine meridian, which actually stands for, in this context, our digestive tract, this is the symbol of our biological strength. And it means we have to consciously do something to support it. If they're about the same size, this means you were given a good, let's say, average strength. You don't have to consciously support it, but it's only common sense that you would still be reasonable in your food choices. So what we do is wrap this all up, and we take a look at our lifeline, and we look at the index finger. We see what is the overall picture. Then we think about things we've learned from other sessions. How about the size of the mouth? If the mouth is very broad, very wide, this means less constitutional strength in the intestines. So now we have three things we're working with: the size of the mouth, the index finger, and the lifeline. So always trying to bring things together and verify and confirm and try to get a whole picture, because no one aspect really gives us a clear idea. It gives us some insight, but it's not the kind of clarity that we're looking for to make a real clear decision. Like, what is my condition, what is my background, and what should I do, especially to improve that, to promote my development. And when we do this, then we're actively involved in determining our future. There's nothing worse than to have the feeling that things are out of control, that you have no influence on your life or what's happening to you. This is the way many people live, and it makes life scary. It's pretty scary to just walk around and at any time just things will happen and you have no control over them. Will I get cancer or won't I, or am I going to be healthy, or what's happening? But when we become involved in our own health and being able to see what's going on with us, then we become the active molders of our own fate. Of course, there are other influences there which are beyond our conscious control, but we can do a lot to determine our own health and to determine our future, and especially the future of our children. We can teach our children conscious food habits. We can teach them how to have, to make the kind of decisions that they will have a strong nervous system and be able to deal with the problems. So that is the whole purpose of this, is promoting human development, because that's what we're here for on this earth, is to develop ourselves. And of course, the spiritual side of life is very important, but through proper understanding of health and food and natural living, we can do the most to make our lives or our bodies optimal for spiritual development. And in the end, we see that spiritual and physical development go hand in hand. It's artificial to separate them. So, on this note, we'll conclude this session, and thank you very much.